To say it's 10:02, so we're going to go ahead and get the meeting started. We'll remind everyone the meeting is being recorded and that we will share a link once the meeting is over to have all the presentations and the audio and everything available. So just want to let everyone know our guest speaker today is going to be the COGS Environment and Development and Transportation Departments. So their presentation is going to focus on stormwater and how it affects development and economic development. And then want to remind everyone that our guest speakers that the presentations tie back to one or more of our goals with the SEDS. So in this particular case, obviously economic development is one of our major objectives and focuses. So that definitely going to be a part of that. And I think this is going to be very timely considering the unprecedented rains that we had last week. Many people had records broken, so it's going to be interesting to see what they have to say. For the guests joining the meeting, we do encourage you to use the chat feature if you have any questions. Jerry Watson with COG staff will be taking care of that. And then the Zoom webinar will provide us of a record of board attendance, so we won't need to do that at this time. Moving on, I'd like to introduce our new board members. Both of those come from the economic development arena, so they are definitely well versed in what our board is all about. You should have received their bios in your email, so you can read up on them and all the wonderful things and history they have behind them. We have Julie Pierce, who is president of the Ennis Economic Development Corporation, she will be representing Ellis County. And then John Knight is the Assistant Director of Economic Development for the City of Red Oak. And so he will be representing a city with a population of less than 30,000. So just wanted to also recognize on item number 3, Fred Schmidt. Fred will be leaving us as a board member, unfortunately, but it's a good opportunity for him. He has taken a new position with the it's the senior manager for industry and workforce engagement with the COGS Workforce Development Department. And he took that position at the beginning of the year. So now that he's taken that, he has tendered his resignation to the board. So congratulations, Fred, on your new role. And would definitely like to thank you for all of your efforts that you have put forth on the board, serving as vice chair and then chair over I counted up, I think 8 or 9 years because you were a founding member. So you were right there with me and Marty at the very beginning. And I know Pritt came in really early with Lucille when it all started. So definitely sorry to see you go. With that, if anyone else would like to say a few words and wish Fred well, now would be a great opportunity to do so. I will say, Fred, it's been a pleasure working with you. So, hopefully we'll find another opportunity to work together in the future. Obviously with you there at the workforce board, and with the COG, we'll probably see you around on other things. So
absolutely. It's been a pleasure working with you also. And Pritt, Jim, welcome to the leadership. I'm loving this opportunity with Workforce Solutions for North Central Texas. And the thing that really excited me is the opportunity to work with a lot of the board members to really drive and continue to build economic development within North Texas. So I appreciated working with everyone, helping form this board, and looking forward to this next chapter.
Well, Fred, I again enjoyed briefly working with you on the board. I've been on it a couple of years and look very forward to working with you in your new role. There'll be a lot of interfaces between you and many of us that are sitting here on this board in our daily roles. And so I look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Fred, Craig Hall's here, going back to the days of TCC Northeast.
Yeah.
All the best.
Thank
you. You'll be great. You'll do great. And I can't wait to blame you for things that go wrong with this organization. Department.
Absolutely, 100%. Good to see you, Craig.
Alrighty. So with that, again, thank you, Fred, for your service, and you will be missed on the board here. Our next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the August 5th meeting. Hopefully you did receive those with your email with the meeting invitation, and you've had a chance to review that. So I'll certainly entertain a motion to accept those minutes if anyone is so inclined.
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, got a second? All in favor? Raise.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Okay, I think we're good there. As far as the next one, number 5 on the agenda, we do need to, with Fred stepping down, we do need to nominate and vote for a secretary for the board. With Fred's resignation, I have stepped up into the chair position, and then Jim Wiemeyer has stepped into the vice chair position. So that does leave the secretary position available. So do we have anyone that would be interested in serving in that position? Definitely, if anyone has any discussion about that, or maybe there's someone you'd like to nominate at this time.
I had sent a note out that, I'd be, more than happy to do it, but if there's somebody else really chomping at the bit, then, I'll certainly step aside, but if no one else wants to do it, then I can certainly devote some time to it.
I will second Chris Strayer's nomination.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, don't let grass grow under your feet, Robert. I will second that before someone nominates me, as I think that's what you were saying there.
Yeah.
And Cassandra, just to be clear, I had to actually change jobs just so the chair and vice chair weren't both from Ellis County. I just thought it would look bad, so I moved to Collin County.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I saw where Julie was coming on too, and then we've got John Knight. I'm like, okay, so Ellis County is very well represented on the board. So, okay, so we have a motion for. I'm sorry, I missed the name on who
Chris
that was.
Strayer.
That Chris Strayer. Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Erica Sullivan's got that. So all in favor for Chris Strayer for secretary? I'll take a vote for that.
Aye.
Aye.
Do we have any nays? Okay, Chris, the job is yours, buddy. So
All
I'm
right.
sure. So Prit, I'm sure we'll fill you in on all the details on that. It's not a super difficult job. Mainly it's availability for discussion and certainly for the board meetings. So
So
appreciate
Chris,
you taking the
Cassandra and I
time.
are going to go ahead and log off, and the rest of the meeting's yours.
Yeah, there you go. That works. That's a coffee break. Yeah, great. So that will take care of that. And so now we have a full board. So I, Cassandra Carroll, will be as chair, Jim Wiemeyer will be vice chair, and then Chris Strayer as secretary. So that will have that wrapped up. So moving on, our guest presentation will be the North Central Texas Council of Governments Environment and Development Department presentation. So we're going to share a copy of that presentation and the recording of it after the meeting. So we'll have an opportunity to go back and review it. Or if you have to leave early and don't get to catch it all, certainly be available to you. Board members can unmute to ask questions. And for all guest attendees, we ask that you use the chat feature and that we will have staff there available to take those questions and relay those to the presenters. So as far as that's concerned, JW, I think you're the one that is going to start this off. So I want to turn it over to you and let you and Prit run the presentation at this time.
Had to unmute myself. Okay, good morning. Can y'all hear me okay?
I can.
Yes, sir.
Awesome, thank you. Well, thank you everyone for the opportunity to present on our study, the Transportation and Stormwater Infrastructure Study. My name is J.W. Hayes Jackson. I am a planner here at the COG. I specifically work on floodplain management projects and have been with the COG about 3 years now. Also joining me in the presentation will be Kate Zilke, Program Supervisor for the Environment Development Department here at COG, Jeff Neal, Senior Projects Manager with the Transportation Department at COG, and Barbara Wise, Principal and Senior Economist at Highland Economics. Just to give some housekeeping rules. Feel free to interrupt at any time with questions. The more questions, the better. I don't want to get through a whole presentation and y'all get confused at some point. So absolutely feel free to interrupt me at any time with questions. So again, the Transportation Stormwater Study is a proactive study that aims to address the long-term planning needs of reducing flooding risk in making communities in North Central Texas more resilient. So before I give you more about the goals of the project, I want to give you a little bit more about the background of how this study came to be. So about 2018, 2019, our transportation department came to our environment development department with a question of why are our roads flooding? Transportation's developing long-range plans and using the most up-to-date stormwater data, but what they're realizing is 2 to 3 years down the line, roads are being overtopped with water. And that's due to the fact that, again, transportation planning is very proactive and long range, whereas stormwater planning is a lot more reactive. If you look at more stormwater and flooding data, a lot of that data is not recent within the last 10 to 20 years, if not longer, depending on the community. And that's just as how long it takes for floodplain studies to be done. But with the amount of development and growth that happens in our area, that data can become very obsolete very quickly. So our study is focusing on proactively planning for both transportation, infrastructure, and stormwater management concurrently to create a paradigm shift to try to mitigate the risk of flooding as development and growth is happening more rapidly within our region. So again, a little more about the purpose of our study. We're looking to integrate that long-range transportation, land use planning, stormwater management, and environmental planning together. We also want to look at minimizing flood risk in flood-prone and development in flood-prone areas to reduce that risk upstream of the DFW area in areas where growth is happening more rapidly, but we can still get ahead of it. Also, we are looking to develop tools and resources and policy recommendations to empower our communities to take charge and getting ahead of this development and promoting sustainable development. We also want to implement more local scale innovations and collect more robust data that includes collecting how we can collect better data for flood warning systems, as well as produce planning level models for transportation, infrastructure, and stormwater detention. So a little bit more about our study area. We, again, want to focus on not where growth is already, but where growth and development are making are increasing more rapidly. So you can look at, we have two different study areas, the West and North study area. The boundaries of our study area are defined by a combination of watershed boundaries, the NCTEDD service area boundaries, as well as the existing impervious areas in our area. That's just areas where you will see more development, concrete and surfaces that don't allow water to permeate into the ground. And then more about our project area. Our project area includes 85 cities and portions of wholes of 8 different counties. In our study area, we're expecting to see the population grow to over 2 million residents by 2045, which would be a 120% increase from the projections of 2020. Much of the area is undeveloped as of 2015, 60% of that area was undeveloped. However, we saw 19% growth in impervious surfaces between 2006 and 2016. So we know that growth is happening as well as development is happening, which is increasing the likelihood of flooding within this area. And then the challenges we're looking to address within our study. As I said before, growth and development are the key drivers of the increased amount of flooding we're seeing, as well as the increased storm and rainwater that we're seeing within our region. Here in the DFW, we have almost 8 million people living in the area, with over 50,000 people coming each year. This leads to more urbanization and development within our region, leading to more impervious surfaces, which affect our floodplains. And again, going back to the idea of stormwater and flood plain management being more reactive, as development happens, the floodplain is changing. So you can have a flood map that says, hey, the flood boundary for the 100-year floodplain is given, here. But if a 4,000 home development comes in, that floodplain can change, and homeowners and residents in the community can experiencing flooding in areas that they have not experienced before, as well as increased runoffs from more large rain events that can also become fatal. Again, we are dealing with a data set that is piecemeal and not region-wide. So each community has its own different data and infrastructure for their stormwater, but there isn't an integrated system that shows all of those systems together. We do have updated data such as the NOAA Atlas 14 that is being updated every 10 years, but even that is a very long time of period that growth and development can happen. And also, we're looking at increases in transportation funding within the region. With higher spending, we want to make sure that we're protecting the lifespan of our infrastructure and making sure the rate of deterioration from storms isn't deteriorating our systems more quickly. And again, this map kind of shows the predictions and projections of impervious surfaces within our areas. And I think it does justice to show how much growth we're projecting within the next 50 years. As you can see from the 2020 side of the graphic, for the region, we were sitting 6.4% of impervious surfaces. But by 2070, we'll see more than 5 times that amount within the region. That obviously is going to decrease the natural absorption rate of that area, further leading to elevated flood risk. And the benefits this study is trying to promote for our communities is obviously reduce flooding and the damages that costs that come from flooding. We know, again, with having to repair infrastructure and property losses from different flood events can get costly, especially to our business communities. We also want to promote sustainable development. Again, with being more proactive, we want to shift the idea of developments in the economic community, taking more of an invested interest in developments that address flooding rather than it becoming an afterthought once flooding is already occurred. Again, we're looking to enhance infrastructure resilience as well as the economic resilience within our region. Flooding can disrupt supply chains as well as businesses if people can't get to economic hubs due to flooded roads. And then also we're looking to encourage communities to participate in flood management programs that can also reduce the flood insurance premiums for property owners or any landowners that might need flood insurance. And then specifically for this community, because it's easy to generalize the overall benefits of this project. We want to make sure for this group specifically, we want feedback on how we can encourage different policies and sustainable development within the economic development community. So some of the challenges this study is trying to address are obviously how to reduce property damages. Again, flooding can be very damaging to land inventory as well as different machinery businesses own. As again, business operations, flooded roads can lead to halts in operations as well as supply chains if roads are flooded. And then some of the opportunities we're looking to take advantage of are green infrastructure. We think investing in green infrastructure for the business communities as well as new developments can help increase the resilience of those infrastructures as well as the overall community. And then using approved land data to help the economic community make better decisions on where development should happen. Again, it's easy to say a property is outside of the flood plain or flood zone, and it's right on the line. So encouraging the communities to look at not necessarily developing right at that line, but giving themselves more of a buffer outside of that flood zone. And then obviously looking at other innovations in floodplain management, such as making flood warning systems more robust. And then lastly for me, this graphic shows the methodology we're using in order to achieve these goals and recommendations. So again, something that's very important throughout this whole process is stakeholder engagement. We want to make sure that we're creating products and recommendations that our communities actually want and will use, rather than creating a plan that just sits on the shelf for the next 10 to 20 years. So we've already gone through the process and are continuing to go through the process of collecting and analyzing data. But some of our main deliverables that we're looking to produce are updated mapping and modeling, as well as those policy recommendations. So that includes looking at the H&H data that exists and seeing how we can make it more current and up to date for communities, so they have a better picture of what flooding looks like today and tomorrow, rather than what it looked like yesterday, as well as what the impacts of flooding are on the transportation infrastructure at large, and developing tools that help our communities make better decisions when it comes to developing. Again, environmental planning, we want to offer a menu of green stormwater infrastructure projects that communities can use other than and in tandem with gray stormwater infrastructure. And then obviously, again, evaluating how we can make our flood warning system more robust. And again, all of this leads to supporting and empowering our communities to be able to get ahead of growth and development within our region. So with that, I will turn it over to Jeff Neal to talk about our transportation challenges and opportunities.
Thank you. Thank you very much, JW. It's wonderful to speak with everyone today. And I think as you've seen from the information that JW had described, transportation does have a very large role to play. And in fact, the reason why we're participating in this is because we're already tasked to respond to resiliency needs at multiple levels of government. I'm showing here that we have to do this on a federal level, and describing that whether it's through the US DOT's strategic plan and through various orders and regulations from Federal Highway Administration, we're trying to do as much as we can to support communities, to support transportation, and ensuring that infrastructure is resilient enough to withstand extreme weather. That we're typically as a metropolitan planning organization very much involved in the planning level of projects. We often get to the project level because we are involved in a lot of travel demand modeling. We're involved in a lot of direct consultation, coordination with communities where certain projects are happening. So we do get into environmental processes and often start looking at things like engineering and design to see how everything's going to fit within the community, how well it's going to function over time. But it's the operations and maintenance side where we're starting to understand MPOs are really need to get a great deal more involved in that capacity. We already have an emergency and disaster preparedness department within our agency, but ensuring that we're working with them and other communities to make sure that our infrastructure can respond to events, can withstand the stresses placed upon them, and then be able to recover, be able to build back better, if you will, knowing that at least through this point, we do have more money, we have more ability to be able to incorporate these considerations within our work. This is really the best time for us to become involved in this process, and so very fortunate to have got into contact with all of these partners to begin this major study. Next slide, please. The wonderful thing is that there are already a number of best practices out there in which we can start incorporating this work. Obviously, it's trying to find ways to take these general processes and then try to get them, understand how they are best applied locally, and making sure above anything else that we have the data, we have the cooperation with our partners to understand how can we assess the vulnerability of our infrastructure right now. Can we make sure that this is something that we can do repeatedly over time? So we're not just doing this work at one particular point in time. We're seeing how our vulnerability changes over time. We've got a way to be able to address critical facilities. We've got a way to be able to integrate resilience concepts into planning and in asset management. And these are all very good processes in place that we're using as guides for this project. But the most important thing is being able to integrate new sources or additional sources of data to be able to get at the problems that we're seeing. Next slide, please. And it was interesting. I believe, Cassandra, you had brought up earlier about how it was last week where, after a long period of time, the area received some significant rainfall. I think one of the things that we're looking at these tools to help us with is not just how much rain do we get over the course of a day, but being able to break that down into smaller points in time, because you can get 100-year, 500-year storms, not just over the course of a day, but over a much smaller amount of time. And does all the infrastructure in the area support being able to, hold on to that water, transport it wherever it needs to be for retention, detention, or as you see in the picture there on the right, in the area of Chico, Texas, Dry Creek, and this happened last year back in May, you have situations where the water will be able to completely inundate roadways. We're seeing that happen a lot more often. And so our process is here to understand just how much can we do within a transportation right-of-way. So often we're crossing floodplains we're on borders of floodplains. Can we ensure that we're finding ways within the work that we're doing to hold as much water back as possible, not contribute to the amount of impervious surfaces coming in, and working with neighboring land uses to ensure that as all of this precipitation comes our way, often in different intensities, that we have ability to be able to hold back that water as much as we can, and using all of these different data sources to help us. Most importantly, I think, being able to view in real time, in some cases where we can, how water is coming into an area, draining, and what puts what puts certain infrastructure at risk based on the amount of rain that's falling and how quickly is it going downstream. And so base level engineering is the way that we're hoping that we can accomplish this. Next slide. And what this will do is enable us to make sure that we're understanding the changes in condition and performance over time, and that our bridges are right-sized, not only for the capacity that they need to carry from a traffic volume standpoint, but from the ability to make sure that they are certain flows of water that must travel through them are able to do so, and that they're not not a weak link in a chain that over time they're going to end up backing up more water in a certain storm and put more infrastructure, more properties at risk. But this base level engineering enhancements will allow us to see, will allow more simulation of what's happening now. Can we validate it to what's happening now? What will happen in the future? Can we storm shift? Can we bring certain scenarios in, like if in a certain area of the region, if post-tropical storm dropped 10 inches of rain in a certain location, and it was able to accommodate that amount of water, take that similar scenario and place it about 50 miles away, because at some point in time, this area will experience storms of that nature. And so we need to understand, where can we add bridges and culverts? Where can they be expanded, knowing that we'll have improved data on these kind of parameters, as well as the geographic and engineering considerations happening around them, so that we know where bridges need to be raised, expanded, and work as a system to be able to accommodate water flows. Next slide.
That slide before there was a question.
Yes.
You are building this, and we can wait till the end if you'd like, however you.
Yes, the question was, will this study be able to detail levels of where we designate areas for regional detention? Yes, we are hoping that this study is going to produce that kind of information. It's going to help us see that every sub-watershed, based on the amount of new urbanization that's happening, new water flows will result. And they'll result over the course of certain lengths of time. We're trying to find out where are the most appropriate areas to be able to retain that water, so that it doesn't continue to flow downstream, knowing that other conditions might be present in those areas and only add to the volume or aerial coverage of water that might affect certain structures, both current and in the future. Have there been any innovative solutions that have been successful in similar metros elsewhere, is another question I'm seeing, Britt, specific to mitigating flooding. We are doing an exhaustive literature review to find out exactly that. Where have places experienced this before, certainly riverine areas, and how might we use those scenarios to best help us? Replication and amplification of this work is incredibly important. And so where can we learn from other areas? What can we learn from those experiences? We want to make sure that we're incorporating that information in as wherever we can. Where this is particularly important for me is asset management. You saw in the photograph there in the slide just before the previous one that when water covers the roadway, it does significant damage. It's able to soak into flow or erode various layers of the pavement base. Once the flooding is able to inundate all layers, the stiffness and integrity of that pavement is reduced dramatically. So you lose its ability to perform over time as well as it needs to. This is why obviously it's important within transportation that we understand where this may be happening and how it can be avoided as much as possible. Because it will impact short and long-term operations, and when the design life or when the ability for it to be intact and functional is reduced, that's more money. That's more money over the course of the life cycle that communities, development, all of us together must pay to be able to keep these facilities functioning. So bridges, pavements, we're going to understand where all of that area, where all those areas may be impacted. I think I have one more slide to go after this, and then we want to make sure that we're showing that if we can be proactive, how much of a return on investment is that? If we were to bring in more ability to see over time how that changes costs and performance, would we be able to calculate the return on investment or make it so that all of this is certainly feasible from a benefit cost standpoint? We're wanting to do that in transportation. We're wanting to do that along with our partners elsewhere. And with that, I think I will shift it over to our next partner, who will present the environmental economic benefits, expanding on what we're trying to do on the transportation side. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Barbara.
So thank you all for the opportunity to present today. My name is Barbara Wise, excuse me, and I'm joining this study as focused more on the social economic aspects. So several people have talked and touched on many of the benefits that are economic in nature. Most of the study, as highlighted in a lot of Jeff's presentation, is really focused on understanding where flooding would occur through time with increased development and what can be done in terms of technical solutions with different retention basins and green infrastructure for handling that increased stormwater that comes with increased development. My side, the economic focus of the study is really focused on what information can we develop on what the economic and social benefits are of green stormwater infrastructure, nature-based solutions, and what's the comparative cost of those types of solutions compared to traditional stormwater infrastructure management. So I think we've covered most of what I have in this slide about why we care about stormwater management. The growth in the area, much of that growth occurring in floodplains, then that reduces the ability of the land to naturally absorb runoff, and that then results in more flooding. And then, as JW so eloquently described, this results in big problems economically with damages to infrastructure, private property, businesses, and also influences our quality of life in terms of public safety, recreation opportunities, all those sorts of things, which all of that then in turn affects economic development. So much of economic development is related to reliable infrastructure, whether that be transportation or other infrastructure, resiliency to weather events and other economic shocks, and overall quality of life. And all of those things can be related to flood management and stormwater management. Next, please. So as Jeff highlighted, one of the aspects of this study is really looking at the return on investment. And that requires thinking about what our best investment options are and comparing them. So as we compare them, we need to think about the cost side. And Jeff really described there's multiple features, both in terms of installation and construction, and then long-term life cycle maintenance of different infrastructure options. And then we also think about what's the land requirement. And the land requirement and where it would be located may differ from green stormwater solutions versus traditional. So all of those things we want to think about on the cost side. And on the benefit side, we need to think about the certainty and reliability, how much we can count on this infrastructure. What is its effectiveness in terms of the flood reductions? And then this sort of big bucket that I called co-benefits. And co-benefits mean not just flood management benefits, but there can be many other benefits when we're looking at green infrastructure and nature-based solutions. And so those are super important to take into account as well. Next slide, please. So in this slide, I'm highlighting what a lot of those co-benefits might be, or other benefits that we need to take into account when we think about green stormwater infrastructure and nature-based solutions. So on the left-hand side, we have financial cost savings. So these are ways we're actually reducing the amount we're spending on the infrastructure or other aspects of management of water. So the first is sometimes green stormwater infrastructure is just cheaper. So right out of the gate, we have a financial incentive for these types of stormwater solutions. The second is in terms of ongoing operations. If we're not shuttling water to the stormwater treatment plant or other areas where it costs us money to manage it, if we're naturally infiltrating it in the ground, that can save us money. And we can also have energy savings, both in terms of treatment costs, reduced treatment costs, and also in terms of if we have more forest in our developed areas, that can actually cool the local temperatures. And there's numerous studies that show that heating bills and cooling bills in particular, can be reduced because of that green infrastructure. So that's on the left side, we have these financial cost savings that we need to consider. On the right side, we can also have a lot of quality of life improvements. So the more green space that we have often just creates a nicer environment for people to live and work in. It's attractive. People like how trees and other green infrastructure looks. We can also provide more spaces and opportunity for recreation. So whether that's transportation associated recreation with trails, or it's more parks or different public spaces that incorporate green infrastructure. And we talked about the cooler environment. Also, trees in particular can help improve air quality. And then water quality can also be enhanced through wetlands and riparian areas and other features that some stormwater, green stormwater infrastructure areas include. And finally, health benefits. So all of these will take into account as part of the co-benefits of different stormwater management options. And then as on the bottom of the slide, so the bottom line is that we really want to take into account financial costs associated with different solutions, what the effect may be on property values, the effect on business environment, and then finally quality of life. And all of these things then in turn can affect economic development. And one other thing that I didn't really highlight on the slides, but that I think is really important too, is we'll also be trying to look at who would benefit where. So if we're looking at it from the problem side of where would the flooding, where would the flooding occur? Where do we need to put the stormwater infrastructure? Those may be two different places. We may have flooding downstream, but we need to take care of it upstream. So thinking about where are the costs being incurred and where are the benefits being accrued is a really important piece when thinking about the financial aspect and return on investment. So we're thinking about who may benefit and who may need to be thinking about where the investment would occur. Thank you. I think that's the end of my slides.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions for the group in the presentation?
Well, we have more of the presentation, but
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I thought
about
we were
Barbara's
finished.
section.
Gotcha. Go ahead, Kate. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kate Zilke with NCTEDD's Environment and Development Department. And JW had shown you sort of a smart art of the general goals and tasks within the study. But here I'll give you a brief description of some of the more technical results, and I'll keep this high level for everybody. We have some great technical partners. One of those is Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service, and they're using Geographic Information Services software to look at a number of factors. They're taking that hydrology and hydraulics data that JW first introduced us to. The Corps of Engineers and some consultants are producing that data, and hydrology tells us how much water there's going to be. Hydraulics looks at terrain and tells us where it's going to go. So AgriLife is using that data along with some environmental, socioeconomic, and infrastructure data to map flood susceptibility across the study area. And then we've got other partners who are going to take that the next step. So let's go to the next slide, please. And then we have partners at University of Texas at Arlington who are doing some really groundbreaking modeling work, who are incorporating data from the Corps of Engineers and AgriLife, looking at the estimates of increased imperviousness through 2070 and how that will affect how much water is flowing through our surface water system, and doing some really extraordinary modeling, massive quantities of modeling to identify the most optimal locations for detention or retention or other green stormwater infrastructure to tackle this increased flood risk. Next slide, please. So in addition to those really technical outputs from the study, we're going to have some additional recommendations related to policy. We're making a number of site visits. We're trying to visit as many communities as possible to get folks' input on what kind of challenges and opportunities that individual governments are facing related to development and flooding. And we'll take all that input and create tiered recommendations for a variety of policies. And it's so important for us to have tiered recommendations because our communities range in size from maybe 50 residents to more than 1 million residents. And the median population size of our communities is less than 5,000. But the kind of policies that we'll make recommendations related to include flood control and mitigation, transportation infrastructure, stream gauges as part of our effort to improve flood warning systems, performance measures related to planning for new transportation infrastructure, cost benefit calculations, because we hear time and again, both from governments and developers, that that's such an important component in their decision making. We'll also look at what incentives are available for conserving flood-prone areas and create recommendations related to zoning, building codes, and stormwater ordinances. Next slide, please. So the timeline for this project, gosh, we kicked off this project or trying to gather funds for this project, maybe dating back to 2017. And we just keep on trucking. So through fall of this year, we're going to continue our stakeholder engagement with workshops, presentations like these, and site visits to individual communities. About this time next year, we should have all of that modeling work completed and have identified our policy recommendations. March 2026 is going to be an important opportunity for us to take our preliminary findings out to local governments and other stakeholders to seek their feedback on our results. And by June of 2026, we're going to incorporate that feedback into our final products and submit those later in the summer to our funding agencies. And I think after that, we're all going to go on vacation. It's been a big project. Next slide, please. And it really takes a village to get this range of work completed. We have a number of partners in both study areas, including several departments here at the COG, federal agencies, state universities, regional agencies, and a number of consultants, a couple of water districts too. Next slide, please. And of course, we could not do this without our funding partners, the Texas General Land Office, Texas Water Development Board, Texas Department of Transportation, and additional funding from other partners in the group. Next slide. Okay. Well, we've appreciated the comments and questions we've received already, but we're happy to respond to even more questions. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation.
Well, I just look very forward to seeing the results of the study. I'm not aware of any city that's not experiencing drainage issues. I certainly, if there are any, I certainly haven't worked in any.
Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask one question you have.
I may have missed this as part of the presentation, but is there any discussion on the benefits, economic benefits related to insurance and this, maybe a lower premium and or just benefits from, that type of industry?
Sure, we are working on outreach to the insurance industry, but in addition to that, we are promoting local government participation in FEMA's community rating system. And those communities that participate in that program do have the opportunity to generate lower insurance rates related to the National Flood Insurance Program for their residents and other property owners.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
I have one question. Mary
Sure.
from Grandview in Johnson County. I'm wondering if there is on any of this priority list, like you're looking at some others that are in constant flood stages every time we have a storm or whatnot above others in different areas of the North Texas region. And the reason I ask is because on the far west side of the Grandview Cleburne area, we have a creek that that floods every rainstorm, some worse, times than others. And we consistently have flood rescue. There's a new housing development that is being built just not even a quarter, maybe 6 blocks from this flooded area, which is affecting, the building of those homes, which affects the insurance, whether it changes from regular insurance to flood insurance. There's also the railroad that is right there. They constantly are repairing the road because it's 4 to 5 feet over with flooding, and it's impacting a greater amount of area as the roads erode, the economic development happens, the dirt's moved, pretty much everything you've touched on. But I just wondered if there was a priority list on certain, areas that are worse than others or have higher risk.
I know as part of the vulnerability assessment we're wanting to do for transportation is highlight those areas that are repeatedly flooding. Obviously, we want to be able to get we're not only what is being reported by various agencies, and then we corroborate that with the modeling that's going to get done, but then using that information to develop some kind of a priority listing, which areas flood most frequently, to what level of storm is that happening, so that we can get a better reading on, okay, these are the areas that need the most attention. What kind of projects might be most suitable to alleviating those problems?
So do you get that from the ESD? Are you dependent on them to alert you, or the cities? That's, should I raise my hand and say, hey, that's an area?
That's definitely an area we want to learn as much as we can, and we're finding that in order to really understand the level of what's going on, expanding our data reach and our literature review, has been important. So I think the more that we can understand that, the more precise our modeling can be, and certainly making sure that our vulnerability assessment is as comprehensive and as accurate over all different storm types and situations as it can be.
So Jeff, seeing the contacts on the screen of everybody that presented, would it be okay? I know this presentation is going to be available to all the board members. If you have issues like Mary has, to drop you an email and make sure that you are aware of specific hotspots, and you may already have them, but you may not.
Yes, please contact us. We'll certainly make sure that that we're in continuing communication with board members, making sure that if this is information that's critical for one area, I would imagine it's going to be critical elsewhere. So we want to make sure that we're having all that coverage across our entire study area as much as we can. We want to stay in constant communication.
The question. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, Nika Reinecke. I am a private consultant now, but on the public side for about 30 years, former director of economic development for Louisville. Several years ago, you mentioned some academic partners, including UT Arlington. Was that part of that large watershed study that was done several years ago? Or is it still continuing? The project went to the Biennale Venice competition. Is that something that still going on? Or what do you think of that kind of a study that was done? Or are you familiar with it? I guess questions.
I'm not familiar with that study. We can ask our folks, our partners at UTA about that. So thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Appreciate that very much.
Absolutely. The reason I'm asking is, and you brought up some funding issues or funding that's, funding is always needed. At the time when we were working on that project, there was request of funding from several communities. And I think the only participants for funding were City of Arlington, Dallas, and Louisville. And so I'm just asking if that kind of a large scale studies is going on. Are you looking at any type of funding from communities, again, based on their population or size of their watershed or anything like that?
So we are not requesting local funding for this study. Our funding is state and federal. Some of our subcommittees here at END have also volunteered some funds for the study. So I guess technically speaking, those are our local funds. Now, Sue had written in the chat about opportunities for this group to further participate. And we do have plenty of those opportunities. I'll go through them. We are making site visits to communities within the study area. So you can tell us about your flooding hotspots, your development hotspots. So if you want to reach out to JW, he'll be happy to schedule one of those site visits. I think we're going to Louisville tomorrow. And we also have a technical advisory group that meets quarterly. And this is a great opportunity to keep abreast with updates on the project and provide your feedback. And we have a couple of workshops that we're planning. We're hoping in May to have a workshop with our counties about regulating as the state law allows them to regulate to a higher standard than the national flood insurance requirement. We're also working on a workshop probably for this fall that would bring together upstream and downstream communities, maybe in multiple roundtables. We're still thinking through the format, because they're directly impacting each other in terms of their growth and put their heads together in terms of maybe how they can make each other aware of development that could impact the downstream community. And, you know, everybody's downstream or upstream to someone pretty much. So those are all opportunities for this group to engage. Further on in the project, we plan on having a workshop for the development community because they're a very important partner in this study. And I will put our website in the chat, and the website itself also has a link to a story map that's sort of a more visually engaging opportunity to look at how we're approaching the project.
All right, so if there aren't any more questions for the group or for the presenters, we'll go ahead and move on. Thank you, everyone from the Environment and Development Department departments there at the COG. We appreciate everything that you've presented to us, Kate, JW, Jeff, and Barbara. Thank you so much for your time. So
Thank you.
with that, Prit, if we can go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. I believe that is new business. So do we have any updates, Prit, as far as the board with what's going on within the region on the Economic Development District Board?
Like you mentioned earlier, we've had the addition of two additional board members. We haven't had any direct communication from the Department of Commerce or EDA on any changes to programs or funding opportunities. Obviously, there's been some announcements from the new administration on some changes, but we haven't heard anything from Department of Commerce or EDA. The only thing that is that, as you all know, the board knows, as some of you know, Stacey Webb, we would need to make a formal request for her to brief or present to the board in the future. And so I will certainly be doing that for our May, August, and November board meetings so that she can brief you on any information she has from the EDA side. Between our last meeting and now, we did announce two funding opportunities in the August-September timeframe. One was the Good Jobs Challenge, and the other one was Built to Scale. I did meet with several organizations that were interested in those programs. Ultimately, we had a few applications go out, one under Built to Scale and two under the Good Jobs Challenge. So Region remains active as far as that. The other update I'll provide for you is, as you all know, I've been here about 4.5 years, and Lucille Johnson started this district. And really the last region in Texas, or even the last region that became an economic development district. And so we're reviewing a lot of our web pages and information and revamping a lot of that material so that it truly reflects more of who we are today versus maybe something that was a little bit more generic or new to us when we started back in 2016 or 2017. And that includes, having the annual reports, having a list of all the funded projects that we have had over the last 4.5 years in this region, which equal about $34 million. And it's really showing the strength and the growth that has happened through the Economic Development District and through the support of this board. And then I think that's it. I'll turn it back over to you, Cassandra.
Okay, so looks like our next virtual meeting was going to be May 5th, 2025 at 10 a.m. And does anybody else on the board have anything they'd like to add to today's meeting before we adjourn? Okay, if not, do we need to have a motion to adjourn, or do I just need to declare that at 11:05 we are?
Just declare.
Okay. All righty. With that, we will go ahead and sign out at 11:06 actually for our closing of the meeting, and then look for those the presentation and everything to come through once Prit has everything available for everyone to download that. And she'll be sending out, I assume, the contact information for the presenters today as well, with those website links and everything for everyone to follow up. So With all of that, I'll tell everybody goodbye, and everyone have a great rest of your day.
Great
Thank you.
seeing everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank
Thank you.
you.